Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back, everybody.
And so we want to thank our new patrons that joined us this week.
Yes, this is a fun one. So we want to say a huge thank you to Doug, Dora, Donna, Dorothy. I just had to put all the D's together because there were so many. And T-Cat, Angela, and Melissa, and Juliana. Thank you so much, you guys. A lot of fun, great week, and spooky. Thank you. How could I forget spooky? Oh my gosh.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for joining us and being on this fun journey with us. I wanted to share some things. This is like sometimes these thoughts for videos and putting things together spring up on me, and then it's like something else has to hit me for me to remember to put this together. And it's like I was waiting for a lost piece of info to tie things together. And in case you're not aware, Abraham Lincoln made a famous speech, which again, the system has now, if you look for this speech, you'll look to where they're saying, oh, well, that was taken out of context and this and that. Oh, sure. The eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mountains of America have gazed on Niagara Falls, as ours do now. That was from a speech that Abraham Lincoln gave, oh, so long ago. I mean, think about this. We in case you don't, and sometimes I think I'm guilty of assuming that people are familiar with all the mounds that have been found all over this country. And what do they house? Well, often there's been bones that have been excavated. And, I'm going to hand this off to Cindy because she has something she wants to say, but I just wanted to put in there too. It's just so funny how this system tries to cover things up, because we all know, we see accounts when you look to when these bones were discovered in thousands of times, thousands of different cases, in many different newspapers all across the country, different time periods. And the Smithsonian came out, and then they're gone. And then you'll find an article that says, claims that the Smithsonian has taken away giant bones are ridiculous, and it's just a conspiracy theory. But it says it in a paper from 1882, and another one from 1898, another one from 1904. Over and over again. Is that just an illusion?
I know. So I was just looking at this quote, and it makes me wonder, because our presidents, I don't know if they, where did he get that information? I guess I'm just drawing a line backwards to try to see who knew what, during the presidencies, the eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. That's saying that they knew the true history. Somebody knew more information.
And not just somebody, but so what was public knowledge?
Right.
I think in 1864, 1865, it was public knowledge that this land was populated by giants.
Right. And it obviously at some point it was really no big deal. And, I hear Lincoln was a pretty tall guy, so I wonder if he was talking from like family lineage, or what did he know and what did those close to him know? So I think if you could find more on Lincoln's writings and his journaling, or even his, if he had someone write the messages that he gave, find that someone, and you'll find a true history.
Yes, absolutely. He's not the only president that mentioned giants, or we're going to put it together with Bigfoot. So American President Theodore Roosevelt, he wrote a lot, and he was a good writer. He wrote on a variety of topics. His memoirs included his time with the Rough Riders. He penned military history novels and hunting experiences. He also wrote about Bigfoot. In his 1892 book, The Wilderness Hunter, Teddy Roosevelt, is in fact his accomplished hunting record that informed him on the seriousness of his wound when he shot on October 14th, 1912, while campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, continued to give his speech afterwards. Coming back to the fire, he stood by it a minute or two, peering out into the darkness, and suddenly remarked, "Bauman, that bear has been walking on 2 legs." Yes, he wrote that he thought it was a creature that was half human, half devil, half goblin beast. Obviously, it was some sort of Sasquatch, Bigfoot type being. Teddy Roosevelt, again, the Rough Riders, thinks, it just takes me back to a period in time when, this country had so many mysteries. And the fact is, it still does. When I look and compare populations and the size of the United States, even though we have 340 million people in it at this point in time, or more if you count the ones that are here illegally, it still is not populated like many places in Europe and Asia. And there are a lot of places where people still don't go on a regular basis. And there's a lot of places that are very dangerous to go unless you're an extremely skilled outdoors person, let's say. And then now, with everybody walking around with cameras and their phones, there are so many. I mean, you can't keep up with all the photographs that come in of Bigfoot and other curious things. Many people have brought up this event. Did it happen or did it not? The Kandahar giant encounter, where American troops, this is Afghanistan, were going into an area and were literally attacked by a giant with a spear, and it skewered an American soldier, and then they fired on it and killed it. And again, 12 foot tall, red-haired, aggressive giant is something that we find in a lot of different myths. The one thing I want to get across too is the fact that there are many different types of giant beings. They're just like when we were watching some clips, and we're going to share them with you. One of the first things that Cindy says is, well, there's many different species of Bigfoot, Sasquatch. This is what started the whole thing. This popped up in my feed, and again, some of these photos could be obviously nothing. They could be fakes. They could be somebody having a giant laugh. They might say, hey, let's make this dummy. Let's hang it by a rope from the end of the helicopter and go over some people in traffic, and let's cause a stir. It's going to be hilarious. April Fools. Well, there are people that would do that. Absolutely. There are a lot of people that would do that. But again, when you look at all the different encounters, there's so many things to link. We couldn't cover it all in one video. It would take forever. This one over here is talking about, this is from Coast to Coast AM, talking about, again, DNA, shocking things with DNA. What's the shocking part of the DNA that they got? Well, the fact that it's unidentified. It's unidentified. It's humanoid, but it's nothing we know of. And there again, we've gotten the same thing from skulls. They want to kind of keep it hush-hush because our reality is not what we're told. Not at all. Not even close. And people are starting to piece this together. So I'll have all these links for you guys. Is this real or is it not? I mean, this is curious. Some people said, no, the arms are too short. They have really long arms. Why is one leg, apparently longer than the other? Well, one apparently is shackled, or is it a vest, or is this just a hoax? But if this was the only one, it'd be one thing. This was a photo that a man found in his grandfather's photo album that looks pretty wild, and this is an old photo. Again, you have a little one. I find that very, very interesting. The fact that there's a little one with either mommy or daddy, and here you have apparently shorter legs, much longer arms, big and stocky, kind of what we would typically think. But yes, absolutely. This has been one of the things that's fascinated me since a little kid. So when I was a little kid, I was reading books on Bigfoot, like I'm talking 4th and 5th grade, just then I was fascinated. And in my mind, I was always going to take a year off from high school, travel the country, especially heading up to the Pacific Northwest, and I was going to see one, one way, shape, or form. I don't think I've seen one in person, but I have seen many footprints that we've seen, and we've felt them. We've felt them around us, and we've been in many different locations. I've seen footprints that I have shared with you guys over the years, from southern Arkansas to Nevada in the desert, to North Carolina. I have seen firsthand and put my fingers into these footprints that were made by, I do think, some sort of Bigfoot type of creatures.
Mm-hmm. There's one commonality with these Bigfoots when I feel one and when I see one, and this is where I get frustrated with myself because I don't have the articulate ability to explain this feeling that I get inside whenever I see one. And it's just this underlying feeling of solidity and matter-of-factness and strength and agility and mysticism. It's all wrapped up in one. So they all have this common type of feeling, or maybe I could call it a personality when I do see one or when I sense one. It's the same thing. And this is where I wish I could take this feeling and plop it into Mike's energy field so he could explain it, because I think he could. But they have a different vibration. They vibrate at a different frequency. That I can tell you for sure, and it's unmistakable.
Well, I miss being on the road. I miss visiting these places firsthand, which Cindy and I have done a lot together. And I've done all my life. I mean, I've investigated many different quote unquote haunted places. As I've shared, I was part of a paranormal research agency, a group. It was all military guys that were stationed in Fort Jackson and myself, as they were looking for somebody with a particular skill set to join them. And it was fun. It was a blast. Had a couple really fun years doing that with them on a regular basis. But even before that, it's just always been in me. This is a regular reality I find in many ways dull. I enjoy the unexplained side of things and love it, whether it's going to ancient forts that still hold the ghosts of many people that defended them, or especially getting out into the woods and getting out into nature in areas where people don't always go. And it's all out there. And the encounters, again, are so much more than people think. They really, really are. There's still kind of like an everyday occurrence that's happening all over.
When I was a child, I had the best childhood ever. I feel I am like so lucky, one of very few. But I got to go riding up in the Idaho mountains on my horse, and I would hear this little sound, this little meow, like every single time I went up there, and I swear I really feel it was a Bigfoot watching me, because we would hear the thing on the mountains and it would make these noises. It was not a cat, it was not a cougar, it was the strangest noises. And I remember my father and his friends saying, that's the Bigfoot howl, that's the Bigfoot howl. And I was lucky enough to go up there in the mountains on my horse, no phone, no helmet. I mean, I loved it. And I was probably 10. I mean, I was between 8 and 10. I got to go up there. So it was such a blessing, and I really miss it. And I hope I get to end this life like that. But then the other time, me and my friend Hannah, we were riding our horses up in the Idaho mountains. And it was funny because we looked at each other. I think we sensed it, because we looked at each other and we said, wouldn't it be crazy if we saw Bigfoot right now? And behind this bush started shaking like it was a huge bush, and it's shaking and it's growling behind. It's like it was scaring us away. And you bet we turned around and we ran down that mountain as fast as we could. It was insane. And I know she remembers to this day.
Do you remember in New Mexico? Do you remember in New Mexico when we would go up to the top of that mountain, and then there'd be that bush was shaking there too. It's been a fun blast, and man, I'm so itching to get on the road, but we got so much going on in these times. Look at this one again. These are from Unexplained Mysteries. I think I had one. Artifactum. Unexplained Mysteries, and this one too. There's another guy that has a small channel, and he tells very, very good stories, retelling of encounters. I'll dig it up and put a link to him too. He's only got like 2,000 subscribers, but does a good job. So look at this. I mean, the detail of would somebody fake this and then put a little one on the back? I don't know. This just hits me as more legit because of the little one on the back.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's this feeling that I get. So I think it's their frequency that I feel, and the experiences that I have had. I do believe that speaks a lot to their ability to go in and out of this realm, go in and out of this density. Because if anybody knows horses, they know that they can smell things, and dogs. And both of these times, the animals were not picking up on a smell. And I think that speaks everything to these masters that can camouflage themselves and move in and out of density. I mean, we really, honestly, we know nothing about them except that they are just like that. They're there and they're gone.
Yes, Clyde, North Carolina, where I was staying for about a year. In that area, I was staying in a cabin that 3 separate occasions, middle of the night, something took a branch and even left the branch leaning up against the house. And whacked it in the middle of the night. And I went out, and at that time it was Zeke that was with me. Zeke wouldn't come out, and he was, when it came to these type of things, he was, not the greatest guard dog in that sense. When it felt paranormal, he wouldn't come out. And I did see a footprint that was not so big, about 14 inches, so still a pretty big footprint, but I measured it at 14 inches, but the fact was that night it was like 20 degrees and the ground was really hard, and I didn't leave any imprint at all, and it was pretty deep. And then at the same time, Cindy and I over in the Amargosa area in Nevada were hiking, and we found a mine shaft, and we found a bare human footprint by the mine shaft. And that was a little bit bigger, and it was coming out of an abandoned mine shaft that was, off limits. Nobody's supposed to go in there. So just crazy stuff. But again, there's been so many cases where they have found bodies, skeletons of all different sizes, and then they disappear. Of course, the control system comes in, and the control system sweeps them all away. By the way, this is an interesting one too, because this one is in Nevada. Nevada has 85% of the land in Nevada is government land. There's a reason. We know the size of Nellis Air Force Base, and then you have all the other up there past Nellis. What's that area called with that lake that you can't go into? It's all military storage. There's military, everything is military, and it's because, again, anywhere there's an inner earth entrance, they have to take over with the military. They can't have us poking around. They won't let us into the Grand Canyon area that we all know of, where it says, again, you have artifacts that look like they're from ancient Egypt and also Tibet. Yeah, this was covering up global civilizations. They cover up the fascinating red-haired giant stories. When I talked about this before, and it shocked me. It was one of the first videos I ever had that they demonetized. All I was talking about was the Siddhika, which is the red-haired giants of again, Lovelock, Nevada, that whole story, which was, actually written in a book, the first Sarah Winnemucca and the Paiutes. This was a book that was the first published book by a Native American woman in our history that talked about these giants that were, 10 foot tall. And yeah, they had an appetite for us. And they were hunted down, and the last bunch of them was smoked out of a cave and was taken care of by the indigenous people. But see, here's where things get distorted, because you'll have people that will think, especially those of a fundamentalist mindset, that every giant had that horrible appetite, but that's not the case. Again, when you look to, and you're taking everything that you're basing it on off of Genesis 6, you're completely misunderstanding the bigger picture. You can't get enough detail off of that little blurb from Genesis 6. You have to actually read the stories that are given to us by all the indigenous tribes all around the world. And also encounters by the Europeans that came in after that. And yeah, absolutely, there were some that were very aggressive. And again, were they aggressive because they were hunted down and exterminated in droves? That could make you aggressive. It absolutely could. Now, it also could be something that's just in them, in this one particular group of beings. Again, like humans, you have all different types of people. You have saints, and you have people that are preying on others. So you can't generalize and say that they're all horrible negative beings, because again, they're individuals.
Well, I think you also need to look at it as in what if it were us, and what if we knew that there was only a few of us left, and there was others not agreeing with our way of life, thinking that we're doing something wrong and thinking that they need to wipe us out. We would be very aggressive. Yes. So it's just a matter of putting your feet in their shoes to the best of your ability, because it is a whole different package and a whole different consciousness. But that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, history is written by the victors, and the victors will put into a negative light those that were their opposition. Once they have controlled things, they will rewrite things and say they were all sinners. Again, with the whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing.
Well, it happens so blatantly today, with the Republican and Democrat Party. Depending on which side you're standing on, they're going to demonize the other side and make the other side sound horrible. So it's just, I guess it's just in the nature of this culture.
Yes. When you look to what will history say? What will history say? History could show a lot of horrible things about what's gone on in the last few years, society-wise, and the dissolution of the family unit, all the twisted, distorted things that are going on, and they might use that as evidence of the great judgment that came upon the United States and the Western nations, and say it was a degenerate society, that's why it was destroyed. But here we are, we're sitting inside, that society, we're speaking up against all the acts and craziness that we see, again, that has eroded any sort of morality and just sense of right and wrong. But they will generalize it and make it like all 340 million of them were evil. All 340 million of them were doing all these abominable things, and that's why they were judged. No, it's just the leadership that tries to get people going down a negative, self-destructive path. This is the thing to realize. But if the leadership's going to rewrite the history, they're going to tell the stories that all of us, were degenerates. This is just the sad fact of it. And again, generalized, throwing everybody into the same category. And this is what's done time and time again. So when you look at this, the Paiutes, and this is bringing up the case, that the Paiutes, on average, were shorter than we are now. And they're trying to say maybe they came from Siberia or Eastern European. The reality is we could look to Leif Erikson and the Vikings. We know the Vikings, came over into North America. And in fact, when you look closely, you'll find that, yes, there's been an interaction between what we might take to be Europeans and the indigenous Americans, so to speak, which again, these redos, they go on all the time. So we are also jumbled. There's no sorting it out and saying this group originally came from here, this group originally came from there. There really isn't, because the reality is also, when we look to Tartaria and Atlantis and Lemuria and Mu, it's not like Atlantis was one island that sank. No, it was a global civilization in which extraterrestrials and many different races and many different humanoid beings of different technological capabilities were interacting all the time. What happens is the system comes in and the system eradicates those that are a threat to the system to such a high degree, and then covers it all up, washes it all away, and changes things into just myths and allegories. And they love to do that. They love to say, oh, these beings weren't real. That's just an allegory about something natural.
Well, when you look to the Bible, there is a lot of that. There's a lot of that. These beings had to be completely eradicated because we deemed that they are evil. But one thing that the system cannot cover up is a frequency, an energy. And the system cannot cover up us activating that ability to read these frequencies and energies. So when you do feel into Atlantis and Lemuria and these other areas, you can feel that collective consciousness, and you can feel it within you, and it's not a lie. One thing I do caution when people say something resonates with them, I do believe resonating can be trained, because you can be going through information in the Bible, and simply because you agree with it, it resonates. There's definitely a difference to me between resonating and feeling a true frequency, because something can resonate with me, but I disagree with it. So there's that. So, it's really a tricky trail to walk down, to learn to feel your way through. It's like we're all kind of like a little bit blind feeling our way through this, because we can't control, we cannot rely on the control system to give us any truth.
Absolutely. Oh, it's fascinating stuff. It really is. And this is saying ultimately the evidence says that the Lovelock culture of giants was not largely, and this word is a no-no on YT, because again, not that they'll just demonetize it, because most videos make like $5. The reality is they shorten and hide it. So they will not let it be exposed, is the real thing. Again, they won't let it be exposed. So, this is just fascinating to see. We have bones, and again, we have bones of a giant species called Gigantopithecus, which is exactly what's described with the Bigfoot legends. And you can see, there's tons of bones. They just categorize them as this, they categorize them as that. And we have stories. And yes, we're going to touch on two here. Enkidu is a legendary figure in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, a wartime comrade and friend of Gilgamesh. Now, again, Gilgamesh is very, very interesting. Did they really find Gilgamesh's tomb? Yeah, that's another thing. These wars are cover-ups so they can go and destroy the evidence of what has just transpired in the last redo. One redo after another, and then go ahead and wipe it all away. The wars lend to an environment where, yes, where there's war going on. Obviously, you're in a situation that it's not easy to move and poke around and look at things. And then there's these bombings and destructions that happen that turn everything to rubble. Absolutely. Again, when you look at these poems written during the second millennium BC, well, what's the oldest complete Old Testament we have? It's from like 900 to 1100 AD. Yes. So these are much, much older. Now, Enkidu is spoken of as a primitive man, and it's just also how they write about these beings coming into existence, because, Enkidu is created as a rival to King Gilgamesh. Now, Gilgamesh, again, is taken to be a sort of hybrid again. Well, we're all hybrids. This is the reality. These bodies are all hybrids. Again, the soul is eternal. We are eternal consciousness. We don't need any sort of dogma to verify that. Many people can remember past lives. Many people can communicate with beings that are already passed on, and many people do. So again, the fundamentalist religion that's pushed on us by society is full of holes and is not accurate. It's just simply not accurate. But what we have here is he is created. Again, when you look to the UFO phenomenon, what does it seem to be really centered on? It's all about DNA. It's all about genetics. It's all about monitoring life on this planet, altering it, changing it. It's like one big petri dish experiment that's constantly going on. So Enkidu is created by a goddess, but Enkidu is described as a wild man, again, kind of like a manimal. Let's call him a manimal, who becomes friends with Gilgamesh, and they are able to communicate, and they are able to kind of get along, and it does become a case of they are friends, and Gilgamesh laments the loss of his friends when Enkidu is no longer with us. Then we have Jacob and Esau, which is a curious thing. When the time came for her to give birth, there were indeed twins in the womb. Okay, twins in the womb, but was it an artificial insemination is the question. And Enkidu, the way that he's created, you got to wonder, again, are we talking artificial insemination? Are we talking, petri dish? Are we talking some sort of extraterrestrial laboratory? The first one came out red, covered with hair like a fur coat, red-haired. And so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out grasping his heel, so he was named Jacob. And, again, you can see this. Now, the Bible, again, what we have as far as pieces and fragments of the Old Testament books are just that, pieces and fragments, literally half of a sentence here, half of a sentence there, from any time BC. So 200 BC, the Dead Sea Scrolls seem to be the oldest that we have at this point in time. Red-haired, was he a giant? Well, they were bigger in those days. In fact, in the Akkadian story and Chaldean story of Genesis, it literally comes out and says and gives heights of like Noah as 36 feet tall. Noah, 36 feet tall. Again, when you look to the cycles of the Yugas, there it tells us that humans in different ages are different heights, and we live different ages, and it varies dramatically. Again, it's all about how high the oxygen concentration is on the planet. But it's describing Esau as kind of a red-haired giant.
Very interesting. I mean, there are so many different species, and you can't really blame any species for wanting to remain on their planet, wanting to keep that species alive. It's just a matter of what abilities did they have that had to be eradicated? And while we're going through this information, I'm learning that it was the ability to sense and the ability to read other people, where communication, if there was no ability to speak, that was no big deal, because you knew what the other being was saying. Just like our animals communicate in complete silence, they'll have a long conversation in about 10 seconds and there you have it. They've come to an agreement right then and there. And we had mastered that ability, and that was taken away.
Again, these bodies are temporary vehicles, but they have modified our vehicles. As I've said in the past, it's like they take what was a Ferrari and they make it a Yugo, for those that remember Yugos and Chevettes. Yes, that's exactly what they've done. When you look to this again, his name, it literally means made or formed. So this is, again, in my mind, this is all about saying that this is an intentional genetic experiment.
Yeah, and this is what we have. We have so much evidence, and you have to think about the power of perception. If you're given the Bible under a certain perception, like, oh, this is your creation story, but then when you start pointing out that this is what Mike is saying and this is alien entities, then that switches people's perceptions pretty fast when you look at it that way.
Yeah, this is not the creator of this universe, not even close. These are dark entities. So when you look at this, it says the Midrash, which is classic teachings on the Torah, which the Torah, again, first 5 books of Genesis, that are attributed to Moses, who was a military man in reality. The Midrash relates that Jacob was actually created from the first drop of semen, while Esau was created from the second. Huh. So this is a clear reference to DNA, and exactly. They're using a dropper. This is genetic experimentation by extraterrestrials.
And they kind of leave out some minor details, don't you think? I mean, that make a drop. That sounds naughty, but no, it's like a literal dropper. Come on, guys.
Yeah, and the thing that boggles my mind is just how deeply indoctrinated people are, that they literally believe this, literally, in the sense, that they. The whole fundamentalist perspective, I mean, it's like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, it's allegory, but yet there is the reality of genetic intervention, and they want to always have us thinking in biblical terms. When you look to the Mormons and Joseph Smith, again, he was in the Masonic tradition. He was, again, a 33rd degree Mason. And, this is still the system. When they try to give Hebrew names to the American Indian tribes that were here, or Native American, Indigenous American, and again, the reality is, if we are going back 10, 12,000 years, or even 20,000 years, that's not the original people on the land. This shift, this jumbling, this immigration, migration thing goes back way farther than that. And the system goes back even farther. And so it's always happening. 2 nations separate at birth. I don't know how people can believe in these things literally. It just boggles my mind, especially when, you look at all the evidence from all the other stories, mythologies, and many of them speak very clearly about this. So Edomites, Israelites, Edomites. We have to recognize that what we have is really the draconian system, again, which is operating through those that we would call the Anunnaki and the Igigi. And you look at some of these depictions, which go way, way, way back. Here they put a rather typical European-looking head of the day on top of a kind of semi-monkeyish body, upright though, next to an actual monkey, and again, they're depicting the biblical interpretations. What did Esau look like? Many people have wrote about this, and many people have said the things that we're saying now. And again, theology, the biblical theology is really an act of trying to explain away, as people start to wake up and realize this is all extraterrestrial, and also maybe not all extraterrestrial. It depends on how you want to call it, because many of these beings have been here as long as we've been here, Homo sapiens, and some predate Homo sapiens being here. So, again, you can get into the fact that, yes, there are inner Earth cultures that are very ancient, extremely ancient, and have a lot more technology. There is the extraterrestrial component, especially if you want to expand that word to include perhaps other lands that are not on the Terra or the Earth that we know about, because the Earth itself is actually much bigger. When you look at all the depictions of Esau from the Bible, in reality, isn't he just another red-haired giant? That's apparently what we're looking at. This is a place that I've been to myself and can feel it. And I felt like the entire time I was here at the Devil's Courthouse, I was being watched. And at the same time, it was almost entrancing to the point where you feel the urge to just go and sit down and go into a meditative state, because there's so much information here. This is in North Carolina, the greater Asheville area. This is at 5,720 feet. And this is where Judaculla, who was another giant, and this, you see a couple depictions of Judaculla. I've seen him depicted many ways, from looking like just a big indigenous American, so to speak, to a Bigfoot type thing, to a red-haired giant, kind of everywhere in between. As we've shared, Judaculla is a fascinating one, and according to the Cherokee legend, he was a slant-eyed giant who lived up high in the Balsam Mountains. He guarded his hunting grounds, and from Judaculla Judgment Seat, today known as Devil's Courthouse, he also ruled on different altercations and different types of things that a judge would rule on today. Quarrels between tribal members, quarrels between humans and non-human beings. It's pretty fascinating. And Judaculla rock is there, and I've put my hand on it too and touched it, and there is a handprint of Judaculla on it. It's said that he could jump over a mountain. He was so big. It's interesting. The other thing I noticed there is a lot of what I would call elemental activity. Man, the elemental activity there is really intense. And so there's a lot of people that are local to the area that talk about encounters, not just with Bigfoot type beings, but also with things that we would call like fairies and things.
Well, when you're living in an area that's really populated, someplace like Vegas or California, you're surrounded by mechanical things. So you're desensitized to the communication that there is out in the forest. And when you do make it out to the forest, there's different levels of how many different elementals are going to be in any particular area. It does seem like they do favor certain areas. So if you are in tuned to the trees, to the forest, you're going to be able to feel these different levels of information fluctuate up and down depending on where you're at. And where Mike was at, there was a high level of communication everywhere, from the plants to the insects, to the mice, to the squirrels. I mean, everybody was on board with everyone else, and it was just known to communicate. So some elementals actually expect you to communicate with them. If you're going to walk in their forest, they're going to feel that you should hear them. And if there is a warning, and if you don't heed that warning, well, you might just trip and fall. I mean, that's just the way they are. So they expect to be heard in some areas. There's different attitudes, different perceptions, different personalities, per place to place to place.
Yeah, this is the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. So this is a site I've used for a long time. I just find it interesting because here, if you want to go check out and see, I wonder if there's any Bigfoot sightings by me. Let's see. Okay, I'm in Illinois. Well, you could see, yes, the last one that was recorded was June. There's 303 sightings in Illinois that they have recorded right here on this database. 324 in Ohio. So, some of the locations might surprise you. Because California, that's a hotbed, 461. But did you realize Florida has 343? And like I said, Ohio, 324. How about Washington State, 721? That's a lot of sightings recorded. And so you could go here and check it out and see. And we realize that most are not recorded. Most people are too embarrassed to, people are going to think you're crazy if you've had a Bigfoot sighting. And again, not all giants. These are the encounters down in Patagonia, which Patagonia is the area in Argentina and Chile, pretty cold area, where you'll find these ancient maps are constantly showing giants about 10, 12 foot tall, very friendly, very outgoing, very welcoming. And this is exactly what's recorded in the record books. I don't think anything can be as fascinating as besides having your own encounter, as reading some of these entries from 400 years ago, 400 to 500 years ago, about what these Europeans were encountering when they came over to North and South America, because it wasn't empty. And there were all sorts of beings here that were very intelligent and also very friendly.
Mm-hmm. The different attitudes go through different dimensions, the different personalities. One thing in life you can expect is a difference in personalities. You can always expect things to change, but also to be the same. So nature, she moves in cycles, she moves in patterns, yet never the same. So it's pretty amazing out there, this world that we live in.
Yeah, this little guy is not afraid of this giant.
No, he's not. And he's just, kind of curious, looking at the dribbles. And I mean, this guy is just wanting to know what's up. He says, hey, talk to me, play with me, come see me.
As always, guys, we want to thank you again for your support. We couldn't do it without you guys. Look forward to your comments. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.